right, as Chris and I were just talking about, in just a moment, I'm going to talk to Zohran Mamdani for his first national interview since the 33 years old, self-described socialist set off what I would call a political earthquake last night. Now, if you're a loyal viewer of this show, first off, thank you for being a loyal viewer of the show. We really appreciate you. And second, you probably recognize Zohran Mamdani. If you're a New Yorker, you probably recognize Zohran Mamdani. He's been my guest here twice since launching his campaign. We've talked about a lot, but a lot has happened in even just the last 10 days or so since we spoke. In a race where he was polling 10 points behind just 4 weeks ago, last night he gave a victory speech, and here's part of what he said.
Tonight, we made history. In the words of Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it is done.
Now, Mamdani ran in a crowded primary field, very crowded, against 10 other candidates. One of those candidates was the presumed frontrunner from the very beginning. You can see him on the screen. You know who he is. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who resigned in disgrace 4 years ago after 11 women accused him of sexual harassment. And yet, somehow, despite that, this mayoral race, this primary, was supposed to be Andrew Cuomo's comeback. And somehow, despite all of that, he had all the traditional backers that you might expect for a normal Democratic frontrunner who wasn't accused of sexual harassment of 11 women. He had all of them. Most of the major unions endorsed him, with some notable exceptions, I'll say, like Sean Fain's UAW. He also had virtually all of the money on his side, including a record-breaking $25 million from a pro-Cuomo super PAC funded largely by Michael Bloomberg, Trump donor Bill Ackman, yes, that guy, and the delivery company DoorDash. Cuomo also had many of the old-school big-name political endorsements, including from people outside of New York who decided to get involved, like former President Bill Clinton and Congressman James Clyburn. I guess for some, and I've been thinking about this, why they endorse, there's lots of reasons, I suppose. The fear of supporting a young, self-described socialist overtook the fear of supporting a credibly accused serial sexual harasser, I suppose. That's one of the reasons. But despite Cuomo's advantages on paper, the endorsements, the money, all of that, and his very high name recognition, which is certainly an advantage, he ran what has been described repeatedly as a joyless campaign. He was largely shielded from his critics, he avoided tough interviews, and he campaigned in overall a pretty unimaginative way. By contrast, Zohran Mamdani ran a campaign that could not have been any more different. I mean, for starters, he showed up on social media with creative videos from the very beginning, like these.
I'm freezing. You're wrecked as the next mayor of New York City. Let's plunge into the details. We have just begun our walk through the entirety of Manhattan. We're outside because New Yorkers deserve a mayor that they can see, they can hear, they can even yell at. Hey! Tumne kabhi kisi ko vote kiya? Will you be my Democrat? New York is suffering from a crisis, and it's called halalflation. I'm about to say something to you you've never heard a politician say. Please stop sending us money. I'm putting out the call to New Yorkers. Assemble!
They were joyful, they were authentic and funny, and each and every one of them either explained what he would actually do as mayor or gave voters practical information about how and where to vote, which is incredibly important when you're trying to turn people out who don't always vote. But Zohran Mamdani's campaign was also a massive organizing success. It wasn't just online. I mean, the campaign says it recruited over 40,000 volunteers who knocked on more than 1 million doors before Election Day. And he showed up in places where he wasn't expected, which is pretty key and a big lesson, like Crown Heights, which is a historically Black and Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn, where Mamdani held one of his final campaign events. Despite Andrew Cuomo's direct appeal to those exact voters, Mamdani won that neighborhood by 26 points. He won for a range of reasons, partly by sharing his contagious love for New York City, whether it was eating an egg and cheese at a bodega or riding the Staten Island ferry. He did it by running a campaign that was optimistic, that was hopeful and aspirational. One where he said what he thought, not necessarily always what was politically popular. And he did it by speaking to the core economic struggles of millions of people in the city.
I believe we can freeze the rent for more than 2 million tenants and build hundreds of thousands of affordable homes. I believe we can make the slowest buses in the nation fast and free. And I believe that we can deliver universal childcare to make it easier to raise a family in this city.
Now, what is right in New York City isn't necessarily right for every city or every state in the country. The demographics are different. The issues people care about and they grapple with are different, unquestionably. Maybe Mamdani will be one of the leaders of the Democratic Party. Maybe not. We'll see. But regardless, this race is what makes politics joyful and inspiring. Someone who everyone underestimated, someone who was doubted and questioned and attacked with racist mailers and attack ads, someone who the gray hairs in the party said was too young, too inexperienced to win, overcame all of that. Look, it's so easy to be cynical in politics. And believe me, I've been around a long time. To rely on what you've always known, whether it is the names or the styles of campaigning, the types of events, or even the policies that poll well. But that playbook is tired, and that playbook no longer works, clearly. It's not over, though, either. And this is part of what we're going to talk about. I mean, there's still a road ahead. The primary race won't officially be called before the ranked choice votes are tallied next Tuesday, though it seems very clear Mamdani will have a big advantage. And Mamdani still needs to win in November. He will face another disgraced opponent, Eric Adams, who has the distinct honor of having made a deal with the devil in the White House to stay out of jail. So he has that honor, I suppose, to run on. There are also tough questions Mamdani will need to answer as he works to build on the coalition that led to his success last night. That includes expanding his support in New York and finding a way to address the concerns of some voters who disagree with his views on Israel and how he has expressed them. So yes, there's plenty of hard work ahead for Zohran Mamdani. Plenty. Plenty of hard questions he needs to answer. But what he accomplished last night is also a reminder that politics is supposed to be, it is about how you make people feel. It's about inviting people in. It's about making the voters who you are reaching out to feel that you are a person who hears them, who wants to speak for them when no one else will. And there's no question that, at least as a start, he has a huge gift for that. Joining me now for his first national interview since yesterday's election in New York City is Zohran Mamdani. It's great to see you. I don't know if you've slept, and I'm sure you are still processing what happened last night. A lot of people on our team stayed up and watched your speech. I just laid out how I think you garnered as much support as you did. As you've processed this, what did I miss?
I think you covered quite a bit of how we got to this point, and I think the only thing I would really add is this volunteer team that we've built of now more than 50,000 people, they are the New Yorkers for whom democracy had started to lose meaning. It started to lose its relevance to the struggles of everyday New Yorkers. And they are the ones who for so long had not seen themselves in our local politics. And yet they are also the ones who brought us to this point, who knocked on more than 1.5 million doors across the 5 boroughs and showcased that a vision for a New York City, currently the most expensive city in the United States, a vision that would make it affordable, is one that speaks not only to progressives, but speaks to New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, from Harlem to Bay Ridge, and speaks to the very fact that ultimately what city government's job is to make this city that much easier to live in and actually achieve the very dreams that brought you here in the first place.
As I'm sure you know, you probably haven't consumed all of it, I suppose, but there's been a lot of analysis, a ton, on what your success last night and in the last couple of weeks means nationally for the Democratic Party. Unquestionably, it means something about how people campaign, but what do you think it means?
I think it is part of a larger referendum on where our party goes. And I think one of the hopes that we had from the very beginning of this campaign was to move our political instinct from lecturing to listening. You know, at the national level, after the presidential election, we saw that New York was actually the state with the largest swing in the country towards Donald Trump, 11.5 points, and that swing took place far from the caricature of Trump voters, instead taking place in the hearts of immigrant New York City. And I went to those neighborhoods. I went to Fordham Road in the Bronx and Hillside Avenue Avenue in Queens, and I asked those New Yorkers, the vast majority of whom were Democrats, why they voted for Trump and what it would take to bring them back to the Democratic Party. And again, what I heard from them was cost of living, was an inability to afford the very things they recalled being able to purchase 4 years ago. And when they told me what it would take, they said again and again a relentless focus on an economic agenda. And ultimately, in listening to them, we built a campaign that was explicitly about making this city affordable. And I think too often in politics, there's a desire to impose what you think the debate is upon the people that you're seeking to represent, as opposed to listening to the very issues that are making it difficult for them to keep calling the city that they love the city that they live in.
I mean, you're running on issues that are very relevant to people in New York City, the cost of housing, free busing. Some have projected, that this is the type of platform that would work in other parts of the country. I mean, you're a proud democratic socialist. Do you think that is a platform that would work for other candidates running in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. I think ultimately this is a campaign about inequality. And you don't have to live in the most expensive city in the country to have experienced that inequality, because it's a national issue. And what Americans coast to coast are looking for are people who will fight for them, not just believe in the things that resonate with their lives, but actually fight and deliver on those very things. And part of how we got to this point was through the endorsements of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders, who've been leading this fight against oligarchy across the country. And I think that in focusing on working people and their struggles, we also return back to what makes so many of us proud to be Democrats in the first place.
Let's talk a little bit about the path forward here, because you still have to win a general election, and that is going to be hard fought, which I know you know. You're on track to defeat Andrew Cuomo. He called you to concede. Afterwards, a couple of times, he seems to have floated this potential plan or consideration of running as an independent. Are you preparing for him to run as an independent in the general election, or do you think it's possible he could drop out entirely before next Tuesday?
I think that everything is possible in this race, as we've seen over many, many months. And ultimately, we are prepared for taking on whomever our opponents may be in November. Because when I started this race, I started it running against Eric Adams' second term, running to finally have a city government that sought to resolve the affordability crisis, not exacerbate it. And when Eric Adams dropped out of the Democratic primary, it was Andrew Cuomo that picked up the mantle of that second term. The same donors, the same corruption, the same small vision funded by big money. And we have now defeated that vision in this primary, and I'm prepared to defeat that vision in the general, no matter who it is that's carrying it.
If Andrew Cuomo drops out, he had a lot of big money backers. Do you think they're going to big money back Eric Adams? Is that what you're preparing for?
I think that it's possible. I also think that we have found exactly the way to defeat organized money, which is organized people. We're speaking about a scale of a campaign that we haven't seen in the city in a long time. And ultimately, we believe in a politics of no translation, one that is both direct to the struggles of working people's lives and also delivered directly. And there is nothing more direct than a New Yorker knocking on another New Yorker's door. And that has been such a key part of this campaign's ability to break through more than $30 million in opposition spending, where New Yorkers were blanketed with attack ads, whether it be when they were turning on their television, their radio, opening their mailbox, or even just watching YouTube, and we were still able to triumph over that.
Both Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, obviously two Democratic leaders, have had some, I guess, nice things to say, I could describe them as, about you, but didn't endorse you and still haven't endorsed you almost 24 hours after Andrew Cuomo called you to concede. Why do you think that is?
Well, I appreciated both of their remarks, both their acknowledging of the focus of this campaign on affordability, and also with Senator Schumer having worked with him closely to deliver close to $500 million in debt relief for thousands of working-class taxi drivers, as well as successfully defeat a proposal to build a frack gas power plant in my district of Astoria in western Queens. And I think what we are seeing in this moment is an understanding of the mandate that New Yorkers have given us to deliver on this affordability, and also the fact that we will wait a few more days to see the actual final results of this, although we know that we have won this race even without the assistance of ranked choice voting.
I don't think endorsements win elections necessarily, but there's not a lot of proof of that in history. But do you want their support, or do you not care if they come out and forcibly endorse you?
I want their support, and I want the support of any leader across this city and this state and this country, because ultimately what we are looking to show New Yorkers is the fact that this is an ever-expanding coalition. It's not one that is trying to keep tabs of when people join this fight. It's one that's looking to actually deliver on this fight. And what that means is ensuring we use every single tool at our disposal to freeze the rent, to make buses fast and free, and to deliver universal childcare.
Mamdani is just not a pulse. I know you didn't mean it that way. And Ocasio-Cortez is not just articulate.
What I meant was that
I just want
he has a pulse.
He has a pulse, yes.
He has energy.
But yeah, correct. And I want to be very clear. AOC is a superstar. Zohran Mamdani is a superstar. He's exceptional. His team was exceptional. The Dream campaign against Cuomo were exceptional. So they ran an exceptional campaign with an exceptional candidate. That is scalable.
We are back with Zohran Mamdani. I just want to continue the conversation we were having before the break, because Senator Bernie Sanders was asked about what I'm just going to call non-endorsements from people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer today. And I just want to play what he had to say.
We saw the Democratic leaders have put out statements that were nice and kind, but not necessarily outright endorsements. Is it time for Democratic leaders to get fully behind him?
Well, the Democratic leadership, sadly, too often is tied to the billionaire class and their campaign contributions. What the Democratic leadership has got to do is make a choice. Which side are you on?
He seems to be saying, but I want to hear what you have to say about it, that it's time for choosing in the Democratic Party, that you have to decide what side you're on, and not endorsing is choosing on the side of billionaires. But do you see it that way? How do you see it?
You know, I think what we are seeing New Yorkers face a choice of, especially over the course of this primary election, was whether they wanted a candidate and a campaign of the past that was funded in the same way that so many campaigns have been, which is by the very billionaires and corporations that I am looking to tax to make the city affordable for each and every New Yorker. And we've seen the people of New York City make their choice. We've seen them make that choice in a manner that has little precedent in recent years. And ultimately, that's the choice that I'm most excited about.
I know you were working to expand your coalition because you are being very careful, which you are running in a general election, and I understand that. So I want to ask you about one aspect of that, because you're running to be the mayor of the city with the largest population of Jewish people outside of Israel and the world. And at a time, which I know you know because you've addressed this before, when there's been a significant uptick in anti-Semitic rhetoric and hate crimes against Jews, it's very scary to be a Jewish American right now. And you've been criticized by a number of Jewish leaders, as well as the U.S. Holocaust Museum, for your defense of the phrase globalize the Intifada. Last night in your speech, you alluded, so I know this is on your mind, you alluded to concerns from the Jewish community, even vowing to reach further to understand the perspectives of those whom you disagree. So for Jewish New Yorkers, I mean, this is sort of the first day. The race hasn't been called, but you did give a speech last night claiming victory, and your opponent did concede. For Jewish voters who are watching right now, who are scared, who aren't sure if you can effectively represent them, what's your message to them tonight?
My message is that I am looking to lead this entire city, to represent each and every New Yorker. And that representation is not contingent on whether or not someone votes for me or someone agrees with me, because the responsibility of a leader is to reach out to all 8.5 million people who call this city their home. And I know that Jewish New Yorkers, like Jewish Americans, are fearful in this moment of anti-Semitism. They're fearful, especially after the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado. And they're fearful also in conversations that I have heard myself about life in this city. I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg not too many weeks ago who told me about the fact that he now locks the door that he used to close, that he used to keep open for years because of a fear of who may come in. I spoke to a friend of mine after October 7th who told me about going to his synagogue for Shabbat services and hearing the door open behind him and turning around with a tremor going up his back, not knowing who was walking in and what they wished for them. And ultimately, it's through the conversations I've had with Jewish New Yorkers that I have developed a proposal for the Department of Community Safety that would include an 800% increase in funding for hate crime prevention programs. Because ultimately, we cannot simply say that anti-Semitism has no home in this city or no place in this country. We have to do more than talk about it. We have to tackle it. And that's what we will do through this funding and through this commitment. We will root out bigotry across the 5 boroughs.
As you're looking to kind of appeal to people or connect with people who are skeptical, what does that look like for you over the next couple of months to the members of the Jewish community, to some of these leaders who have been critical? What should they expect and anticipate from you?
They should expect my continuing to reach out, most especially to those who are concerned or who do disagree. Because ultimately in politics, too often, you surround yourself only with those that are quickest to say yes or quickest to already be in the same place as you, when in fact, we have to be able to navigate that disagreement and that tension. And I often think about the words of a previous mayor, Mayor Koch, who said that if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I think of an elder Jewish woman who came up to me at B'nai Jeshurun, a synagogue on the Upper West Side many months ago after a Democratic Club forum, who whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is, but I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you. And I think that ability to understand that even in disagreement, it's still rooted in a shared sense of humanity, that is something that makes this city great, and that is something that I will deliver as the next mayor of this city.
You're going to be dealing with tremendous attacks from MAGA Republicans. We've already seen that over the last 24 hours, including from Stephen Miller, Elise Stefanik, the NRCC. They're already trying to run an Islamophobic campaign against you, which I will just note, and you've lived this, but for people who are just tuning in, is a continuation of some of the tactics that we saw during the primary, but it's going to come tenfold. I know you know that, but how are you going to handle that personally?
You know, it's sad in that in one sense it's unsurprising, and in another it is still deeply disappointing to see what politics has become in this moment. To have to deal with regular death threats where I'm told that someone is going to blow up my car and is going to kill me and my family and the people that I love. And I've spoken to many Muslims across this city who have shared that their fear of having to be essentially branded a terrorist just by living in public life is one that keeps them preferring life in the shadows, life outside of that specter. And this is not the way that we can have our city be. It's not the way that we can have our country be. This has to be a place where we understand the mutual belonging of each and every person here. And I'm lucky to have friends and family that keep me moving through this. I'm lucky that I'm able, through my campaign, to have security and also to have the assistance of the NYPD in both investigating these threats and ensuring that I have the same public safety that each and every New Yorker deserves.
New York, as you well know better than anyone, you've probably had food from every single culture in New York, so there's that. But it is a very diverse city. There's a huge Muslim American population in New York City as well. You would be, if you're elected, and you've got a ways to go here, but the first Muslim American mayor of New York City. What does that mean to you?
It means a lot. You know, I think about my grandmother Kulsum and my grandfather Yusuf and how they taught me from a young age that to be a good Muslim is to be a good person. It's to help those in need and harm no one. And ultimately, I've sought to do that over the course of my life, and especially in a time when the mere mention of being Muslim is seen as if it is a slur, it is also an opportunity for me to introduce the fact that being Muslim is like being a member of any other faith. It is believing and belonging in a notion of equality and in solidarity. And I know that it is so meaningful for the million Muslims that call New York City their home to see the fact that representation can be something that exists not just across the 5 boroughs, but also in City Hall.
Zohran Mamdani, I hope for people watching who are just meeting you, who are thinking about running for office, think it's not possible, think they can't connect with their communities or don't know how to do it, whether they agree with you on everything or not. They don't have to, that they've found some inspiration in your story. It certainly has been for many people. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.